Please stand and grable for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Linda, roll call, please.
Mrs. West, Miss Janet Doyle, Mr. Luchetti,
Here.
Mr. Rouleau,
Here.
Mr. Janet,
Here.
Mr. Costick,
Here.
Mr. Kirky.
Here. Thank you. All right. Public comments. First on the list is Karen Teller.
Good evening. When I last spoke before you, it was to congratulate the new board and to thank all the board members for their service. After that meeting, I chatted with some of the new members, and one of them asked me to remain an involved member of the community and to help ensure that the board is doing what it's supposed to be doing. Tonight, I am here to honor that promise. As you know, several days ago, our former superintendent, Lawrence Wiley, was indicted on federal fraud charges. Wow. Did anyone in this room or in this community ever think they would hear that sentence uttered? Well, I mean, prior to 2015. That's when a group of concerned citizens did the job that the Board of Education failed to do and began to uncover shocking details of the financial misdoing of District 210. Thanks to them, we discovered many disturbing things about Lincoln Way. We learned that in addition to education, our district was in the business of real estate acquisition, that it awarded no-bid contracts, that it allowed a private daycare to exist within our walls for years without paying rent, that we let a professional orchestra use our facilities free of charge despite charging their patrons to attend concerts. We even had a sign touting that relationship, which I'm pretty sure the taxpayers paid for. We also paid for a dog training facility that this board has publicly acknowledged offered no student benefit. And the list goes on. Over the past couple of years, we learned our district's administration did many things that were disappointing, unethical, and perhaps even illegal. Some will say that this is all behind us and I should not bring up the past, but I disagree. And of course, it's difficult to do in light of the recent indictment announcement. We've all heard the quote often attributed to Winston Churchill that those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it. Therefore, I think it's very important that we remember our district's history so we can ensure it acts ethically and in a fiscally responsible manner in the future. I think it's safe to say that many people saw Dr. Wiley as something of a hero for many years. Statements I've heard include, Dr. Wiley was a legend, or he was an absolute genius in school financing. Or, as a former board president stated, when Wiley said do something, you did it. I understand and respect loyalty, but it can't be misplaced loyalty. And that is the purpose of my standing before you tonight. I am here to remind you where your loyalty should lie. The members of this board were elected to represent the residents of District 210, and that is where your loyalty must lie. It must not be to the superintendent or to the administration. Rather, you were elected to ensure that the administration makes decisions in the best interest of our students and the taxpayers, not in the best interest of the administration, the faculty, or the administration's friends. I believe one of the main reasons our district got in trouble is that the board members who were elected to provide district oversight chose not to do their duty and would not question the superintendent. I am asking you to remember that your duty to those who elected you is to regularly and vigorously ask questions. You should ask the administration for data to back up their decisions. You should demand that administrators be prepared for meetings by having pertinent information available. Many times I've heard this superintendent or other members of this administration say something like, I didn't bring that with me tonight. That should be unacceptable. The superintendent works for you, not the other way around. So So please always remember to hold him accountable. I think we've all seen what can happen when that doesn't occur. Can each of you truly say that you have a healthy skepticism for everything the administration brings before you? Do you take the time and effort to review all information you've been given and ask if each decision is truly in the best interest of students and taxpayers? It seems to me that if you do, each of you should have numerous questions on most topics that are brought up at these meetings. And I believe anyone who has regularly attended these meetings can confirm that there may be more questioning going on than when Wiley ran the show, but I believe there is still a long way to go. You may say you've hired people to provide more oversight in the district, and that's good, but ultimately, oversight is your responsibility. These employees must answer to you and be prepared to support their answers with facts and data, and your responsibility is to demand it. So I will leave you with a reminder that when you were sworn in as a board member, you swore to respect taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of school district assets. I believe you can only do that by asking questions and ensuring that the superintendent and administrators answer them.
Next person is Jay.
Good evening. By now, we're all aware of the news of Dr. Wiley, a disgraced former Lincoln Way superintendent whose underhanded ways have finally caught up with him. 6 of the 7 board members currently serving on this board have no connection to Wiley. For that, I congratulate you, but the 7th certainly does. Mrs. Glatz served nearly 20 years under Dr. Wiley. Next week, that man will have his day in federal court, indicted by the FBI on 5 counts of fraud and 1 count of embezzlement. Facing the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison for his alleged felony crimes, I think it's only fitting to look toward the longest-standing Lincoln Way board member, the one who knew him best. Having such a close working relationship for so many years with Wiley, Mrs. Glatz's credibility within this Board of Education has ultimately been decimated. As a board member, it is her responsibility to protect the investment of the taxpayers who elected her by making sure that every single dime that comes in and out of this district is stewarded at the highest possible level. I am not telling you board members anything that you don't know. It's written in your board handbook. She spoke the very words of her oath when she was elected, yet it can only be assessed that Mrs. Glatz was either recklessly indifferent towards the obligations that came with her oath, or worse, she was actually involved with Wiley's schemes, knowingly and willingly violating that same oath. Please understand, this is not about me wanting a pound of flesh or someone to pay, if you will, for how badly we have all been wronged. This isn't even about what I may or may not think about her as a person. This is a moral issue, and this is about, for once, doing what is right. She is either guilty of gross dereliction of her duties, or she was complicit in the unethical and illegal actions of our former superintendent, a possible soon-to-be convicted felon. No matter what, her time serving on this board needs to come to an end. I don't see how this board can possibly continue to lead with any credibility at all if she is still seated among you. As Mrs. Glatz is absent this evening, Mr. Kirking, I'm speaking to you as board president. Due to her association with Dr. Wiley and in light of all that he is about to face in federal court, I am urging you that at your earliest opportunity, you strongly encourage Mrs. Glatz to tender her resignation from the Lincoln Way Board of Education. Speaking of association, I seem to recall a campaign promise this past election from a few of the candidates who now sit at this table to protect the reputation of Lincoln Way. As Wiley faces the federal judge, I'm wondering if this is the type of reputation that you had in mind. For over 2 decades, the man who built the Lincoln Way empire was a god. A man who built his kingdom on ego and arrogance by laying down the law his way. And all the while, no one was watching. No one was holding him accountable. Not one board member reminded him that he was in fact their employee and therefore subject to their authority. Dr. Wiley simply did his thing and everyone let him. And his final act upon his pending retirement was handpicking his successor. Someone very specifically chosen to perpetuate the ideology that Wiley had built for 24 years, virtually replicating himself in the process. He stuck around long enough to pass on every method, every trick of the trade, everything he ever learned to the man he took under his wing. And as the district proceeded to burn through nearly $20 million of cash reserves in the first 3 years of Dr. Tingley's tenure alone, the stage was set for Lincoln Way to hit the rock bottom, culminating in the ISBE watch list, followed by the last 2 years that all of us would prefer to forget. And is it even over? Are we to believe the growing rumors that West will be the next to close? You know, those same rumors that we were told weren't true about North? You see, ladies and gentlemen, perhaps you can understand why it is so difficult for us to blindly trust and believe what we're being told by this administration. It's pretty difficult to do when you've been burned so badly before. I tell you this story, board members, as a word of caution. Can the man who was groomed, trained, mentored, and handpicked by a crook be trusted to lead this district with genuine integrity? District 210 board members, the superintendent works for you. That's something the man who taught Dr. Tingley everything he knows never figured out. If the twisted tale of Wiley has taught us anything at all, it is the incredible value of proper oversight. As elected Lincoln Way board members, it is your sworn duty and obligation to take constant evaluation of the leadership of this district by remaining vigilant and alert. Because I can promise you there are citizens right here in Lincoln Way who have not and will not stop doing just that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Anyone else? If not, I'd like to move on to the agenda and open the hearing for the budget. Yes,
I'd like to speak for
go ahead, please. Wait, Jenny, on the budget or on the meeting?
public comments.
Okay. Hold off on opening the budget.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm not a public speaker. I'm just a data person, but I have to say we've paid attention for the last 2 years. Dr. Tingley, you've made a lot of mistakes.
The mic's not on.
You got to speak into the mic.
Dr. Tingley, you've made a lot of mistakes, but I have seen a lot of improvements. And I have to tell you from a personal standpoint, we had received several letters in the mail talking about how we single-handedly destroyed the opportunity for North to reopen, or how non-Christian we were, coming from an anonymous person threatening us. But the worst one was when somebody who's probably sitting in this room right now threatened my daughter's life. And I have to tell you, the first person to speak up, aside from Mrs. Glatz, was Dr. Tingley. He was there when most other people turned their backs, including some people that stood beside us for 2 years. Dr. Tingley, I'd like to thank you for that, and I hope that you continue down the road of improvement.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else? All right, if not, I'd like to open the hearing for the 2017-2018 budget. Hearing is now open. Anyone would like to comment, make public comment on the budget? No one signed up, but if you'd like to, Steve, please step up.
Good evening. Yeah, this is a hearing about the budget, but and that's an important part of the whole process of setting the financial guideline for the year. But also part of that is what happens when the district needs to spend more money than was budgeted. And we talked about this last year. I brought it up at the last year's budget hearing. And you know, the state requirements when in any fund, when spending is more than budgeted or is expected to be more than budgeted, a budget amendment is required. And that goes through the same process of a notice, a hearing, and a formal board vote to approve the budget amendment. It looks like from the financial reports that for this past year that was completed, the Ed Fund is over budget by $500,000 or so, and no amendment was filed. So I don't know if that's been, some adjustments been made to that, from the audit, that it's now under budget, or regardless. I just wanted to flag that as far as it's something that didn't happen. It looks like it should have happened. And I don't know if there's an explanation for that, or
Yes, in fact, and Brad can jump in. We had spoken at least 3 board meetings, I believe, in a row about the fact that we were going to go over in expenditures due to reclassifications, mostly of the student activity funds. And as you're aware, Steve, that was a significant finding on the previous audit, was to move all district expenditures over to general ledger, which we did. A result of that was running over. We called down to Springfield in June. Here's the situation. At that point, we said, well, the fiscal year is over. Close your books and move on. We didn't get any clear direction at that time. In meeting with Brad and Kelly, certainly we don't foresee this as being an issue again, because we won't have those adjustments that are being made as a result of the audit findings. In our preliminary meeting with the auditors, we had corrected that deficiency. I don't know that they'll put this on the comment again, as the result of this was caused by the correction in the accounting. Brad, anything to add to that? I know you had worked on that since you've been here.
Not really, other than, I did call down to confirm with ISBE, and basically at this point, any amendments would need to be filed no later than June 30th, so we would have had to act in that in the May meeting for our, put it on display and all of that. So at this point, it's not possible.
Prior to the final expenditures in June. So the other key is, and I know you've spoken to this, Steve, is our consistent tracking of those expenditures, and having now a historical look of operating 3 schools will give us a little bit better trend month to month, but that certainly shouldn't happen again.
Yeah. Well, I think I think all those things are good improvements, but I think the amendment process is also an important part of the process, because it requires engagement of the community to make them aware, so that these things are not done kind of under the radar.
Yeah, and I don't think it was done under the radar, because we had discussed it openly
yeah.
in May and June. So, but in terms of the hearing, yes, you're correct.
Yeah, I just want to make sure the processes going forward are improved, and budget amendments is part of that.
Correct.
I don't know if all the board members are familiar with this document, the mechanics of the school district budget. It's an ISBE document, you can find it there. It's got a good description of the whole budget process, the amendment process, transfers, a whole bunch of things that you guys are involved in assessing, redoing, voting on, and approving. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that, I suggest everybody do that.
Great.
One other thing I wanted maybe Brad could talk about is the effect of the state funding for and aid payments that was kind of settled after the budget was set up, and how that's being addressed in the budget. I know we've talked, but maybe that's something that you could explain to everybody for a second.
Could you repeat that question, please? We're having a hard time hearing.
The question would be was there any, with the planned aid payments from the state of Illinois, will there be any adjustment to the budget, or how could that potentially affect?
Well, the budget was set up before with all this turmoil in Springfield, and there was no set formula for state aid.
Correct.
So I want some explanation of how, if any changes were made, what, if any changes were made to the budget to address that.
Correct. Right.
Okay, yeah, so what Steve is referring to is the final adoption or agreement between the governor and the legislature on how schools will be funded. At the time the budget was prepared, we were even unsure if what funding would be available to the district. The budget was prepared based on the prior or existing law at the time. I will tell you, in tonight's budget you're looking to adopt, there's been no changes made from the time it was put on display on August 21st till tonight. Now, what has transpired in that window of time is there was a compromise made, and they've finally funded a new funding formula, which is called an evidence-based funding model. Now, if you take a look at that model, it rearranges how the district will be receiving its funds. It removes general state aid, it replaces it by that, plus combines some other things. When you look at the amount of money the district potentially could receive, we have at the minimum, we believe we could receive $28,000 more than what's currently setting in the budget right now. On the maximum, if the state actually did follow through and pay us, now remember, last year they shorted us $2 million. But if they did pay that money back, plus the additional funds they promised us, we could be receiving $3.11 million. So that's the range. At this point, we've decided that we should move ahead with the budget as presented, given the cash restraints the district still does have. So we haven't made any changes to that budget at this time. However, that's the range of where the state could be paying us. So I think absolutely worst case scenario, we would receive about $28,000 more than what's in the budget right now.
So that 3.1 million you're saying is the maximum amount, that's over what's currently budgeted?
That is
for revenue?
correct. That is correct. So that would be fully funding FY18 plus providing the back payments that they owe us for FY17. You know, the promise from them has kind of been, hey, we've implemented the new income tax, you know, it's going to solve all Illinois problems and we're going to get caught up. But we also know there's still billions of dollars behind.
So the 3.1 is, you're assuming, or it would be 6 categorical payments then?
Yes.
And what additional money is in there as well? Like what's categorical, and of that 3.1 million, what's categoricals versus?
Right, so they owe us 1.8 million from prior year's categoricals. And then they reclassified, so I know it's a little complicated, but the bottom line is they took several pieces of funding, a couple special ed, English language learners, and they plumped that into the new formula. So we used to get about $900,000 per categorical payment. Now that's been dropped down to about 280 something. So the categoricals are now less. So the categoricals under the new formula would be about $1 million, a little over $1 million. And the rest is being made up of 1.8 of the back money, and the rest is the new evidence-based funding formula.
I think an important part of that, Chris, is the general aid level is equal to what it was last year. They're not using the formula anymore. The formula had general aid on a declining path. Well, that has leveled out. So if you use the formula, the general aid would have been 3.9 million, and now it's 5.2 million. So while we're not getting any more general aid, it's without the legislation, if we had followed the old path, we would have gotten $1.3 million less.
So what?
So that's the most, I think that's the most significant part.
So what general aid, state aid number are we using in the budget?
In the actual budget presented here tonight, we are using the prior number that we had in there, the $3 million.
3.9.
Yeah, 3.9.
And, I mean, the state underpaid us last year, but that was only the categoricals, correct? The general state aid was all paid.
Right. So let me kind of restate an important part. Okay. So what do I call the minimum scenario I see the state paying us? It's $28,000 different than that's in the current budget. What is that number? That number is one categorical from the prior year, which we already got, plus 100% of the new evidence-based funding model, which the state historically, when they rolled it into that category, if you will, this is kind of replacing, well, not kind of, it is replacing the old GSA. So these are bi-monthly payments, and the state has been very regular with those. So that's what would equate to, now it won't be in exactly the right hopper, but that's the amount of money that will be coming from the state. The state hasn't given us final direction on how that's to be recorded, if they're supposed to record it on the same line items that we did, for the general categorical and then special education, personnel, et cetera. I'm assuming because we have our requirement for special education to continue to provide equal or greater funding, I'm sure they're going to require us to break that down. So we're continuing to account for that, just like we did with the old payments.
Also, another benefit is that those special ed accounts being lumped in with the general aid, it's more likely that those are going to come on a bi-monthly basis through the year rather than the quarterly basis like they were, which seems to be a more reliable path for getting that revenue. So that helps some as well on a cash flow basis.
Anything else?
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Okay. If not, I would entertain a motion to close the budget hearing for the fiscal year 2018 budget. Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Yeah.
Okay, just again, at the risk of full disclosure here, Board Docs gives us the ability to vote electronically. So we will all, this way we're not caught in the scheme of whoever gets the vote first kind of sets the tenor for whatever's being put up. Everybody will get the vote, but at the end of the vote, Linda will read the result of the vote out loud. So it won't be, it's not a mystery vote, it's just a more efficient way, and it also takes away what could be some of the perceived bias of who leads the vote on the way down. So, having said that, looks like the voting is now open.
The vote for item C2 is open.
It's very sensitive.
The vote is closed. The vote is unanimous. The motion is passed.
Thank you. And thank you, Steve, for your comments. All right, we will move down the agenda. Next is the consent agenda. The consent agenda exists of approval of minutes from the August 17, 2017 meeting, the approval of the minutes from the August 31st, 2017 meeting, approval of the closed session minute summaries from 2001 to 2017 through June 30th, 2017, approval of payrolls from August 18th, 2017, September 5th, 2017, and September 20th, 2017. Didn't get a list until tonight. Manhattan bus renewal, the approval of District 2 2010 Advisory Meeting Committee for 2017-2018, their calendar, approval of the 2010 advisory meetings from April 10th, 2017. Is there a motion, or does anyone wish to have anything to hold and discuss separately?
We pull out the Manhattan bus lease.
Sure. With the absence of item number 5, the Manhattan bus lease renewal, is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Are we voting?
We're voting on the rest of the consent agenda, less the Manhattan. That's
Who is
okay.
the second? Mr. Costa?
Yes.
Yep.
The online vote is open for item D8, excluding the Manhattan bus renewal. Okay.
Sorry for throwing around.
So we're waiting for Mr. Costa.
There, you have to hit the upper left-hand corner of the approval. Upper left-hand corner of your mouse pad. Upper left-hand corner of your mouse pad.
Thank you.
Okay. The vote is closed. The vote is unanimous.
Thank you. Item number 5, Manhattan bus lease renewal.
We need a motion before we discuss it. No, I don't know.
Yeah, we're
gonna have to approve.
Yeah, to approve it, so go ahead.
Is there a
Motion,
motion?
second, discuss.
I'll motion it.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second.
I have a question. So there was an error, according to the report, when was the error discovered?
It was discovered when they were in the process of discussing and making the arrangements for returning the buses and getting the other buses back. It was during that time that the leaseor brought up that, oh, you know, this other lease is also, you know, and we had it scheduled on the lease renewal for next year. So then we, of course, double-checked that. It was just an oversight when scheduling it. We have a schedule of our leases out. So then that was pulled back, but by that time, the board had already approved the other leases. So we, got it scheduled into the budget, but we'd already had sent everything else in.
So again, it doesn't impact this year's budget?
That's correct.
And these are buses from Manhattan that we had taken over.
Good question. Anything else? Okay, you have a motion and a second.
We have it,
Yes.
and the online voting is open.
Actually, another computer.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No. You got one with the batteries, right?
All right, the vote,
For one, but no, Dr. Rookies got one.
the vote is closed. The vote is unanimous for item D5.
Thank you. Next on the agenda are our student council presidents. Welcome, ladies. Why don't we start with Michelle from Central?
First off, hi, I'm Michelle Burke and I'm the president of Student Council this year here at Lincoln Way Central. I'm extremely excited for what lies ahead as president, and I'm even more excited to share with all of you how amazing my school is. Yes, it is early in the year, but it feels as if time is already flying by. This past Saturday, we held our annual homecoming dance in the Fieldhouse. With over 1,500 tickets sold, amazing decorations throughout our entire school, and a student council that worked tirelessly to make sure that everything ran efficiently, it is safe to say that a night in space was a success. The DJ, the music in the hallways during passing periods, the participation in school spirit days, and just the overall atmosphere at Lincoln Way Central were all major contributions as to why last week was so amazing. For the first time at Lincoln Way Central, our homecoming Olympics, which were held the Monday before the big event, were outside on the football field. I myself was on a team, and without hesitation, I can say that this was one of the coolest events that I've ever been a part of here at Lincoln Way Central. As many of you know, this Friday, Lincoln Way Central football takes on Lincoln Way East here. The student body wanted to take our school spirit to a whole new level, so we're in preparation for this big game. With that, we decided to put red X's over almost every single E in our school to show our pride and our support for our football team. Walking down the halls and seeing all of these X's has made us even more united and ready to cheer on the Knights tomorrow night. Looking ahead, October 28th is the next big date here at Lincoln Way Central. Every year, we put on a Halloween night, and this event gives kids the opportunity to trick-or-treat a few days early in a safe and indoor environment. Leading up to this event, Student Council invites clubs and sports all around the building to sponsor a doorway on the trick-or-treating path and to provide candy and also to decorate their door. This is a great opportunity for us, high school students, to obtain community service hours for this event, or to obtain community service hours as well as give back to the community who gives us so much support. The administration for this event, the admission for this event is one non-perishable food item per trick-or-treater, and all proceeds go to the New Lenox Food Pantry. Things here at Central are off to a busy start, but we would not want it any other way. Go Knights.
Thank you.
To start off, hi, my name is Fizza Jaffer. I'm the Student Council President for Lincoln Way West this year, also a current senior. Next week, West is hosting our homecoming week, so things are really busy for Student Council and for the student body in general. Monday is our homecoming Olympics, and with 1,100 students and over 100 faculty, sponsors, and volunteers, it's our busiest year yet. Our theme is Welcome to Paradise, meaning that decorations are going to go up this Sunday with leis, tikis, streamers, and flowers all over the place. And tomorrow we're also hosting our elections for homecoming court using the new Microsoft Office 365, just like we did for freshman elections last week. Tuesday's theme is Tropical Tuesday, meaning students will be decked out in Hawaiian-themed clothing and tourist clothing. Wednesday is also Beach Mom, or as we also like to call it, comfy clothes, where students can relax a little and wear their typical comfy attire. Thursdays is our annual class colors. Freshmen will be decked in purple, sophomores in blue, juniors green, and seniors yellow, with the staff rocking tie-dye. Friday is our annual weekly orange and black. And sticking with the Hawaiian and Paradise theme for the football game, the West Side and the Warrior Wear leaders are planning streamers and other fun activities, as well as the Assembly Committee, as the pep rally will be 7th hour on Friday, and the senior pictures will be 6th hour that day. The dance itself is September 30th, and the theme is Welcome to Paradise, so we are encouraging students to be colorful and fun and stick to our theme.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, hi, I'm Anna Vanderkoy, and I'm the Student Council President at East this year. I'm really excited to just be able to share everything that's happening at our school. So this past weekend, East wrapped up Homecoming 2017. Student Council had decided on a Carnival theme named Rio de Janeiro. Carnival is the world's largest street fest that takes place in Brazil. The week kicked off with the annual homecoming parade through the neighborhood. Monday and Tuesday, we had Homecoming Olympics and dodgeball with 85 teams and almost 700 students participating. And this included a food drive for the Frankfurt Food Pantry as well. Friday, we had a successful pep assembly where our homecoming king, Michael Barnes, and Queen Sydney Washington were crowned. This was followed by a great win for our football team against Sandburg. The week was highlighted by our homecoming dance with over 2,100 students attending. It was a great week to be a Griffin. Our Interact and ROTC students are leading an all-school drive for the victims of Hurricanes Irma and Harvey through the end of September, and they're going to be collecting donations every lunch hour. Student Council approved the Black Student Union Club at the start of the year, and they recently had their first meeting. They had over 90 students in attendance, so we're looking forward to great things for the BSU. Our varsity football team is ranked #1 in the state of Illinois for Class 8A, and we look forward to a great football game tomorrow night between two undefeated teams as we travel to Lincoln Way Central to take on the Knights. We're expecting a huge turnout of Griffin fans, and the student body has decided that the theme of the game will be Camo Night in honor of Salute to Troops. We wish luck to both teams tomorrow night.
Thank you, ladies. We look forward to hearing from you throughout the year. Appreciate your attendance. Next on our action items. The first item is, except that we're going to listen to Dr. Riley, or is it?
Trying to slide one by. This is a quick one tonight, but we just got some numbers from the state to share with you. Graduation rate is as higher than it's ever been, so it breaks down by school, it breaks down by district. But if you look at the very bottom, those are the students who started here that did not graduate. Some of them left Lincoln Way, and didn't graduate from another school, but 16 kids from Central and 21 from East, 9 from West. Our next step is we monitor those 46 kids, what happened to them. We get a report on them next year, a 5-year graduation report, and usually we pick up about half of those kids coming back. So pretty remarkable numbers, but again, the way we operate is there's 46, and we want to find out what about the 46. But those numbers are great. The freshman on track number came in as higher than it's ever been. Again, freshman on track means at the end of freshman year, they are on track to graduate, pass their 5 core courses, moving along. So the numbers are solid, but if you see at the bottom, 62 kids again, those 62 kids, we know who every one of them is. All of our counselors know. They track those kids. They get them in some special advisories. They call them Guidance Gold at one of the buildings. And it's just a place we can keep an eye on those kids and keep them going. And that's how you take 96% coming in and make it 97 or 98. So proud of our guys for doing that. We've mentioned dual credit a lot over the years, but this is a new one. It's broken down by school. We now get a report from the state on the percentage and number of students who complete at least one college course while in high school. And if you look at it at East, 31% of the sophomores have one in already, 54% of the juniors, 65% of the seniors. So almost 1,100 kids at East in the building last year were walking around with college credit in their pockets. At Central, the numbers were even a little bit higher. 37% of the sophomores, 58 of the juniors, 72% of the seniors is an unbelievable number for kids that have at least one, and some of them we know have 8, 9, 10 courses in. And West was very high also, 33%, and then 57%. That's what should happen. It should continue to grow. We want to see every one of our schools sitting at 70% as seniors. So as a district, 2,700 kids earn college credit. That's with no freshmen included. We never had an on-ramp for freshmen to get into AP. As of next year, we will. A lot of this was Dr. Fury's work. So in the what's new and what's next, we're going to put in a human geography and AP class that's a year-long for our honors freshmen. They can take that. We'd love to see 60 or 70 kids in a building who are ready. Let's go. Let's get them started and pick up an extra class or two. The entire Western Civ that we've had since the beginning of Lincoln Way is shifting to a world history which is just culturally more sensitive, more relevant. I think it's a great move. Our history teachers are all over that. We have a new course this year called Environmental Biology. It is biology comes alive. This is our kids who are, they're good readers, but they're not sit and get kids. They have to get out, get their hands dirty, and learn. This class is absolutely amazing. We've got a few sections in each building. That's what they use as their teaching tools. So there's wolf skulls and moose skulls. They've got these cameras that you put on your smartphone that turns it into a microscope that can go down to a pretty detailed level. They go out in the pond in the back here and they check water levels. And so it's pretty spectacular stuff, and that's just going to continue to grow. I love what we're seeing there. Project Lead the Way is brand new. The engineering and physics classes, kids that are learning by doing even more than by textbooks. And then our anatomy classes have this piece called Anatomy in Clay. They're learning by building the skeletal system, and they build it piece at a time. So a lot of really neat things happening. The other handout that's at your place is about the Foundation Partner Luncheon. I know it's the middle of the day and you have day jobs, but if there's any way possible, this is a really good session, and we introduce 6 or 7 teachers who are doing innovative things. They talk through their programs, get to meet a few of the kids, and that's next Wednesday. So let me or Kathy Zolfo know if you're able to attend, but we'd love to have you there. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. I apologize for excusing me.
I was hustling.
Good hustle. Thank you. Good presentation. All right. If I would just follow your notes on this. All right. Next is action items. Presentation of invoices for August 2017. Is there a motion to accept the invoices as presented?
Motion to approve the invoices in the amount of $2,345,411.07 dated September 21st, 2017.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second. There's a second. Any questions? Hearing none. Linda.
The vote is open for item F1. The vote is closed. The vote is unanimous for item F1.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the adoption of the fiscal year 2018 budget. I entertain a motion to adopt the budget as presented. There's a motion by Member Lulo. Is there a second? Second. Second by Member Janik. Any additional discussion or questions at this time?
No, I just think the memo that was included in the materials answered a lot of the questions that we had on giving a nice breakout and included the timing of bus leases, capital projects, et cetera. So it kind of broke down what was actually coming from the operating budget. I think it would be helpful if we just went over exactly like the operations and highlighting the 3% and how we're going to meet that.
Absolutely, I'd be glad to do that. So, as I mentioned earlier, the budget as presented here tonight is unchanged from what was posted for public inspection. Total revenues, $104 million. of about 3.49% increase, and expenditures of 101 million, a 4.4% increase, with a total surplus of 2.3 million. When you look at just the operating funds, which is in accordance with board policy, you will see that we have an operating surplus budgeted of 3.3 million, which represents a 3.9% of expenditures. As you know, the board goal is to have at least a 3% surplus of, as measured, of expenditures in order to rebuild the fund balance moving forward. When you look at that increase, the budget proposes a $4 million increase over prior year actual expenditures, which has been documented here as you referenced in the memo. Would bring to the attention that the first item, or the largest, 36% of that increase, or 1.5 million, is for capital projects that are needed to keep the district buildings up to a standard, followed by 19%, which would be for salary and benefit increases, or 754,000. So if there's any other questions, that's an overview of the budget.
The capital projects, those were the ones that were done this summer, correct? The 1.5 million?
Right.
That was already spent. Anything we talk about in the future is going to be in the next fiscal year.
That is correct.
And just back to this, the revenue, I mean, obviously, I think we're being conservative. I think I'm fine with that. Of that 3.1, I mean, is it safe to say, I know they're splitting payments differently, but we basically, if we were to budgeting for 4 of 6 of the categoricals, which I think is reasonable, that would be about 2.5 million, correct? Like if two of them.
Right. If we budgeted for 2 more.
I just don't think that, the state has 16 billion in bills. They still haven't issued debt to pay it. They might by December, but I don't think, putting out the budget, I don't think we can count on that at this time. So I think I'm comfortable being on the more conservative side.
Any questions? Anything else from any of the members? If not, Linda, please open voting.
The vote for F2 is open. The vote is closed. The motion is passed unanimously for item F2.
Thank you. Next, item F3, adoption of the 2017 tax levy. Is there a motion to accept the tax levy as presented?
So moved.
There's a motion by member Costick. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by member Janik. Discussion on the tax levy.
Has anything changed from what was presented last month?
No changes from what was presented.
Any other questions?
So the only thing that the budget uses, the revenue was calculated utilizing one growth figure, but in order to make sure that we capture everything in the levy, we left in the growth at 100 million, which we think is high.
That is correct. And when the final new growth number is known, that will be adjusted down by the treasurer, county treasurer.
When is that number known?
Well, typically March, just right before the final levy set in April.
Any other questions from the members? If not, Linda, please open voting.
The vote is open for item F3. The vote is closed. The vote is unanimous. The motion is passed for item F3.
Thank you. Next is item F4, Treasurer's Report for August 2017. Is there a motion to accept the treasurer's report as presented?
So moved.
Motion by member Costick. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by member Doyle. Questions?
The expenses through the first 2 months in education are running about $700,000 more than fiscal 17. In transportation, I know the bus lease, but it's even higher than that. The expenses are running about $890,000 more than fiscal 17. And it's the reports that we got kind of are offset by additional revenue in education of 1.3 million. But can you kind of explain the variances?
Right, so, I mean, one of the things that we've discussed, and we will prepare for next month, is to break the budget down by each fund, so it helps out a little bit, because when it is consolidated, so it is a little harder to track those variances. As you mentioned in transportation, so when we're looking at those, I shouldn't call them variances, it's an analysis of where we're at trending wise. So for example, transportation, we had payments that were made in fiscal year 17, so they weren't made in 17, or fiscal year 16, they weren't made in 17, so artificially 17 was a little lower than what would be the normal trend. So you're experiencing that little higher than normal trend in fiscal year 18. As far as the ed fund, we are trending a little. We were looking at that again today. We do have a reclassification of one lease payment that was recorded in ed that will need to ultimately to be paid for out of debt service. So we'll reclassify that. And then we'll prepare the reports on a fund by fund basis, which will help be able to identify every little thing for next month.
Any other questions?
Have we received any additional payments from the state?
Yes, so you know, during the budget stalemate, the comptroller released one of the prior fiscal year 17 payments, which came in, and then they did get the new evidence-based funding model. It's not been completely evaluated, so we don't know what our exact funding will be, but there is a hold harmless component in there which says no district shall receive less than their fiscal year 17. So they've already recalculated that. As you know, they missed 2 payments to us in August. So we have now received those 2 payments at the beginning of September. And then it appears now we're going to get back on cycle. So we should be getting those on the 10th and the 20th of each month. And it appears those are starting to roll in.
Any other questions?
We'll talk about the cash flows during tax anticipation.
Can you speak up, please?
We'll talk about the cash flows during the tax anticipation more.
Hearing none, please open voting.
The online vote is open for item F4. The vote is closed. The vote is unanimous for item F4. The motion is passed.
Thank you. Next is item F5, student activities report for August 2017. Entertain a motion to accept the student activities report as presented in your package.
So moved.
There's a motion by member Costick,
Second.
second by member Lucetti.
The report was provided. Kelly's available if anyone has any questions or concerns regarding the student activity report.
And your cover memo does a great job of explaining variances, so thank you. Any other questions? None? Okay, please open voting.
The vote is open for item F5. vote is closed. The vote is unanimous. The motion is passed for item F5.
Thank you. Next, personnel report.
All right, personnel report, under employment, Desiree Bainan, assistant girls swimming diving coach. Luke Bell, head boys swimming diving coach. Doug Blevins, painter. Megan Cremio, assistant girls tennis coach. Kathy Hines, bus driver. Connie Husteller, cafeteria worker. Jeffrey Johnson, assistant football coach. Raymond Koda, assistant football coach. Sean Maher, international club sponsor. Christine Milasek, matron. Sylvia Oliver, bus driver. Michael Piaczynski, assistant girls golf and assistant wrestling coach. Marissa Rosandich, assistant boys soccer coach. Brian Stepinski, assistant boys cross country coach. Corin Teske, assistant girls volleyball coach. Alyssa Vanderstadt, speech club sponsor. Kathleen Villa, payroll clerk. Brian Willis Jr., key club sponsor. And Andrew Wingate, assistant girls volleyball coach. I ask the board to approve these employment recommendations as presented.
Entertain a motion to accept the employment report as presented.
So moved.
The motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any questions for Rob at this time?
Could you please define what a matron is?
Our matrons are someone that they handle all the laundry at our schools when it comes to the towels used in our PE or towels used in our kitchens or any other of our facilities. They also help with trash removal during our lunch periods.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, please open the vote.
The vote is open for item F6. Vote is closed. It's unanimous. Motion is passed.
Thank you.
Under retirement, Judy Vallejo, physical education teacher at Lincoln Way East High School, has to retire at the conclusion of the 2021-2022 school year. I ask the board to approve this retirement recommendation as presented.
Is there a motion to approve the retirement report as presented?
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Yes.
Second. Any questions regarding the retirement report? Hearing none, please open the vote.
The vote is open for item F7. The vote is closed. The vote is unanimous. The motion is passed.
Thank you. Next.
Under resignations, Sandra Filkins, bus driver. Sandy Heimberg, bookkeeper. Christine Jansky, paraprofessional. Joel Newton, bus driver. Karen Pedigo, financial secretary. Holly Wang, international club sponsor at Lincoln Way Central High School. Ramey Wilgren, financial secretary.
Is there a motion to accept the resignation report as presented?
He's going to read the rest.
Oh, you're going to do leaves too?
Yeah,
I
leaves
apologize.
gets bunched in here. Under leaves, Karen Isla is asking for a 7-week FMLA leave at the conclusion of her maternity leave. And Jacqueline Savage is asking for an 11-week FMLA leave at the conclusion of her maternity leave. I ask the board to approve these personnel recommendations as presented.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
By Member Lucetti, second. Member Costick. Any questions regarding this report? Hearing none.
The online vote is open for item F8. The vote is closed, unanimous. The motion is passed.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob. Next is item F9, 2017-2018 compensation report.
In compliance with state law, the board must approve the compensation reports for non-certified staff over $75,000, and then the teacher administrator salary report. Both will be posted on our website upon for approval.
Is Is there a motion to accept the compensation report as presented?
So moved.
The motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion or questions?
Just so the ROTC instructors are on here because they're not certified teachers, is that what?
Correct. They're TRS versus INRF, correct.
Any other questions? Hearing none?
The vote is open for item F9. Do you want to verbally give me your vote? I can put it in.
He's here.
There we go. Sorry about that.
All right, the vote is closed. The vote is unanimous. The motion is passed.
Next is item F11, policy, second reading. F10, boy, I am all over tonight. The pressure of voting. Appointment of new members, District 210 Advisory Committee.
We would ask for the appointment of the following members: Janet Ritter, Brian Walcott, Michelle Burke, Bradley Sticks, Allison Burns, and Grace Casey to District 210 Advisory for the current school year.
Is there a motion to accept the list of proposed new members as presented? There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none?
The vote is open for item F10. The vote is closed. It's unanimous. The motion is passed.
Thank you. Next item is item F11, policy, second reading.
Policy second reading, the board has had these now for about 45 days. The one new policy would be 7-275, orders to forego life-sustaining treatment. That would be the only additional new policy. That would be a do not resuscitate order, and it has the steps that we would have to follow to enact such a policy or provision. I'd ask the board to approve these policy updates as presented.
Okay, is there a motion to accept the policies as presented?
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any questions or comments regarding the policies?
Just one question. On the press advisory board, I know they're recommending when everything comes back. Are they also the ones that are writing these policies? I mean, the recommended language, is that who's writing them?
Yes, so that's a team that's writing the languages based upon any changes in legislation, but also they review all policies within, I believe it's a 4-year cycle.
What was the impetus behind 7.275?
We do have students that do have a do not resuscitate in place, and so the purpose of a policy is to convene a meeting so that everyone's on the same page, be it school nurse, case manager, teacher. You don't, if the teacher dials 911 and doesn't know, so it's the purpose of anyone having contact in a supervisory manner over that student will be part of that meeting.
Any other questions? Hearing none?
The vote is open for item F11. The vote is closed. It's unanimous. The motion is passed.
Thank you. Next is item F12, surface shield property tax abatement.
This is an item that was on the agenda at our 2 meetings ago, and Patrick Hogan, I believe, is still here from the Village of Tinley Park. If any board member has additional questions, we did provide some additional information. Everything's in public content. If anyone has any questions or concerns regarding a potential property tax abatement.
So they're not actually purchasing, Service Shield is not actually purchasing this building, right? They're leasing it?
Leasing, correct?
I mean, is that typical? Normally when, when I think of it, I always think new building, like new development, right?
Yes.
But then they're not even purchasing the building. And, you know, the example given, which I can talk about in a second, but, you know, where it starts to kick in the full, you know, where they would be paying the full tax is in year 5, and it's a 7-year lease, correct?
Correct.
So I mean, they're not making a long-term commitment necessarily. I mean, a medium term, but they're not buying this building.
Right. They're making a $100,000 investment in the building, and they're also going to do $600,000 in equipment. But I understand that doesn't really affect the assessment of the building. But we're just trying to eliminate the vacancy and also really focus on the type of jobs, because we could stick a warehouse in there with forklift drivers that employ 10 people. This is 55 manufacturing jobs. They're going to average around $60,000. That's what we're pushing for good jobs.
They did agree to work with the school, correct?
Right. The CEO is actually here tonight. And has discussions about background.
Hi.
Hi.
We did.
Sorry, bye.
I mean, the analysis that was in here. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, the. It's the last one. Anyways, the analysis that was on there, basically the assumption is that this, if Surface Shield does not lease the building, it remains vacant. And I mean so that's showing, the case that was put in here was just showing, like, basically, I guess if you're the worst case scenario. So, I mean, that's one extreme. I mean, would this building not be leased if it wasn't, you know, for 7 years?
I'm not going to say one way or another. I mean, we are the state of Illinois, and so the biggest competition I have right now is keeping them from going to Indiana, and we're starting to see more vacancies. I was in the same retail sector as well, so I'm just trying to do what we can to get solid jobs here. When they are available, I understand what you're saying, like maybe it does get leased in a year or two if the product is not guaranteed to be as good as this one.
All I'm saying is I think when we're presented with something to look at, we have to do, you would usually do like a best case, base case, worst case. I mean, this is kind of, I'm just calling it out for everyone because I think that was kind of, you know, it was presented at one extreme of the material that was in the board information.
The assumption is made that it's either not leased for 5 years or it's this proposal for 7 years, but the 5-year with the abatement. So.
It is currently empty, and one section has been empty for, I think, pushing a year, and the other section just became vacant recently, and we're taking the entire building.
It's just, I mean, from my standpoint, it's some, you know, I know this just came up last month, but it's something that, you know, the district hasn't done before. My concern is, I mean, I think we need a lot more information before we move forward on something that, you know, if everyone who is leasing a building or is considering leasing a building in the district comes for an abatement, I mean, we're kind of transferring I know it's not, it's still the EAB, and I know the complications of calculating tax, but it's still moving the burden to others in the district. I mean, I think it's hard for us at this point, when we have negative cash balances, to move right into being an economic development engine. I mean, I think how we have to provide for growth is to make sure that the schools are, in the best shape and are, attracting people to the area. So I think it's hard to kind of set that precedent. I know you would vote each time, but I also think, there was a discussion in the legislature about, I know it was about tax increment financing districts, but there was talk about, well, if you're abating any property, how could that impact, what you get from in-state aid? Now, it didn't move forward, it might never move forward, but I think you have to have a much more in-depth analysis done before we can move forward. Because I would like to see, have other districts done this. And again, I'm not 100% knowledgeable on this, but it would seem like this seems like it's usually when you have new development, and then this isn't even buying the building, they're leasing the building. So that's just mine.
This actually is not going to set precedents because the Will County Center for Economic Development does put them through a score sheet. There's a certain amount of standards. There has to be a certain amount of jobs. The jobs have to pay so much, and I think it has to be in a certain industry before we even consider it. So if another company would come in, like I'll use the warehouse example, and they get 10, we wouldn't even consider offering it for the partnership with the next students. So there is a score part of it that does go.
I believe you mentioned there was 2 portions of the building that were vacant. One was vacant for about a year. This one just became vacant. Are you aware of anyone that's looked at that portion that's been vacant for the past year? Any companies looking to, are you looking to move and aware of anything like that?
Yeah, and the ones that I have is more of a service type of a business where like indoor entertainment, that would employ like 2 people. I'm really struggling. I want the manufacturing jobs. They have a much higher multiplier.
So if a landlord is looking at this and they're going to go, their option is 0, where they're not going to rent it, why wouldn't they make concessions on the lease as opposed to coming to, the school districts and the village?
Well,
because they're the actual owner of the building.
They would wait to get a regular warehouse to go in there if that would come along. Or they would like to ask us to change it so it could be an indoor softball training facility. But that's not what we have it zoned for right now. There have been other tenants that want to come in, but it's not the best use of the building. This is one of the best uses that you can get, being that it's manufacturing and distribution. So I'm looking at the best use when it comes to the jobs and the multiplier effect that comes off of that. There are other people that could go in there, but like I said, the indoor softball, keep using that, but it's not the best use for a facility that's sucks. It's industrial. So yeah, they can
He's
get
saying
that
there's not a demand. His premise here is the demand is unique based on it's a manufacturing business. To your point.
Struggling to save their normal life. We can do warehousing all day. Look at them.
I believe too, this is why we came to Patrick, was we actually were looking at Indiana, and that's our other choice at this time. And the rent rates and the tax rates, of course, are much lower. We've always been an Illinois-based business. We were in Tinley Park for quite a few years, and we're in Cook County now, and would like to get back to Will County. But this is one of the only buildings that the landlords have worked with us and tried to get somewhat of a reasonable rent rate to compete against Indiana, but then the taxes are still a big dividing factor.
Would you mind speaking on your willingness to work with students for internships, job training, things like that?
Sure, I know that was posed to us, and that's an area that we find really exciting. We've had internships in the history of the company, and we always, have enjoyed that. And I said I would be very happy to come up and formalize a program to figure out a way if we could add value to the school, even if it's only touching so many kids a year. But we definitely would have opportunity for that within the business.
Thank you.
How many jobs, you said approximately 50 manufacturing jobs, is that what I heard?
55.
55?
Start.
No, I'm sorry. And then, is that new, or on top of of the people that you already employ, it's 55 more, or?
Yeah, we're estimating 35 more over the next couple years, because we're going to be doubling our facility in size and ordering additional equipment.
And you're in Orland now?
We are.
At this point, I would entertain a motion to accept the abatement as presented in item F12.
So moved.
Is there a second of that motion?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any additional discussion at this point? Since we have a motion and a second, no additional questions? Linda?
The online vote is open for item F12.
We're not going to get money from that. No.
The online vote is closed. The ayes are 6 with Ms. Janice Doyle, Mr. Lulo, Mr. Janik, Mr. Costick, and Mr. Kirking. Oh, I'm sorry, 5. I apologize. And the no is 1 with Mr. Lucetti. The motion carries on item F12.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Congratulations. All right, that ends our action items. We move on to section G, informational items. First one is a report on the Lincoln Way Special Education District 843 Governing Board meeting held August 22nd, 2017.
Yes, I attended that meeting, and much like tonight, we had a budget hearing, and much like tonight, it was approved. So the 843 budget is in place for the upcoming year. The rest of the meeting was pretty much standard status quo. That concludes my report.
Any questions for Ron regarding 843? Thanks, Ron. Next, FOIA request.
FOIA requests are included in your backup materials for review. We had a total of 13 FOIAs from August 13th to September 13th.
Any questions or comments on the FOIA requests that are presented here? Next would be tax anticipation warrants for 2018.
Rather than take this over, we'll discuss the timing of cash flow, some of the particulars as they are securities. We will discuss terms in closed session prior to coming back next month with a recommendation to the board.
Great. Thank you, Brad.
All right, thank you, Dr. Tingley. So included in your board information is the outline with the timeline. As you said, we are planning to come back to the board on October 19th, seeking board resolution for tax anticipation warrants in the amount of $27 million. As already been previously discussed here tonight is this new funding formula that's still being vetted by ISBE. But what we do know is, and it's listed there in the background, that we will receive no less than what we received in fiscal year 17. So the 5 items that are now part of the new funding formula would be the old general state aid. So we're going to be receiving $5.2 million according to their ISBE's current schedule. English language education, $8,000. Special ed personnel, $908,000. Special ed funding for children, $842,000. And finally, special ed summer school at $1,500. This is what's comprising of the evidence-based funding formula as it's dubbed now. There are some, of course, that's the minimum. The new formula takes a lot into account. But finally, so then we're estimating our bi-monthly payments at $317,700. That has been built into this cash flow. You will notice then if in the bottom part of the memo, what we deem to be, we see as being the minimum cash flow coming from the state of Illinois would be the 1 fiscal year 17 MCAP payment, 22 evidence-based funding payments. Finally, we're anticipating closing the land sale by January 1st of 2018, and then, of course, normal Will County distribution of taxes. Based on all of those data, we have calculated to be the district's absolute low point in cash would be negative just under 23 million. So we're asking for 27 million authorization, and realizing the district will only draw on the exact amount required to meet the daily cash flow needs of the district. And finally, the district would be working with I know I say here in the memo PMA, we'll discuss this more in exec, but it looks like that won't be happening. But we will be using Ice Miller of Chicago as bond attorneys. And then included there is the actual detail. In some aspects, it's a daily cash flow based on events happening throughout the month. And so if you go clear to the last page of that report, which all good reports, you start at the back and read them, I guess. No. So if you look at that, you can see there the anticipated, on page 4 of that report, you see the summary of anticipated draws on the TAWs, tax anticipation warrants, along with a color coding to help you easily identify in the report. Yellow is actual cash balances. Blue is estimated cash balances. Of course, then this kind of a light yellow, tax anticipation repayments. And then finally, the green would be the tax anticipation draws for on the 2017 warrants. So with that, I would just entertain any questions the board would have on the schedules or the memo.
So for the state revenue, are we using the same amount that we budgeted?
No, we have updated the cash flow to reflect for the, so let me restate that. So what's in here compared to the budget is $28,000 of additional revenue, because we built into this cash flow the minimum which we think we'll get, which is $28,000 more than what's in the budget.
That still puts the cash flow at a low point of 23 million.
That is correct.
So then why 27 million?
The biggest would be the land sales. Okay, if the land sales does not close in time, that would be our biggest worry. The second one would be is if distribution from Will County, they have changed their payment schedule. So it's kind of a new territory for us because they're paying a few days later. Well, that gives them time to wrap up more of their month, I guess. So we were seeing larger payments at different times. So the payments are not as uniform. We're not uniform, but we're not seeing them as what they were historically. So there could be a little one there. And then the final, the other wild card is, will the state continue to make those payments as they've said they were going to? So.
Does this cash flow rely on the holdback on the insurance again?
It does not. We would be current with all payments that's scheduled in here, making those payments to our self-funded health insurance every month as scheduled.
I may have missed it, but does this include the repayment of the Wharton Township?
Yes.
Anticipation was?
Yes.
When does that happen?
It's right here on, apologize, there's no page numbers, but it's on October 4th. So if you just look date-wise, sequentially, let's see what.
It's October 2nd in the O&M.
Oh, there, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, October 2nd.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
So then we would be out of theirs.
Correct.
Just back with this group.
And so then on October 30th, you can see there the final 2016 TAW payment coming out of the Ed Fund, including the anticipated interest.
If all of those negative variables occur that you listed a moment ago, if they all occur during this fiscal year, we're confident that $4 million cushion would still be enough? If all 4 of those things happen?
Well, if all 4 of those things happen, first off, we'll be updating and providing the board monthly cash flows. Second, if all 4 of all of those negative things happened, we're going to be very tight at the 27 million. And we would continue to discuss with the board what options to make sure we make it through on each of our 2 major tight points as the first payroll in November and the first payroll in May. So we're about to hit the first real tight spot, and then once we make it through that, we'll continue to update this every month, keeping you up to date, but there's where we could.
You'd also have the safety valve with the
Insurance payments, sure.
And then you could take the other side of that, you talked about before, negative consequences. There's a potential $3 million positive impact if the state stepped up and did what they were going to do. So.
Right, and, you know, so it's a proposed draw schedule. We
Sure.
will draw as appropriate.
Best case scenario.
Right.
I just, what I missed, and I appreciate it, was the word township TAWS going away.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? So this will come back next month, and we'll look for a motion and move forward after discussion. All right. Thank you for all of the answers. Okay. That was taken. Next is item G4, District 210 Advisory.
Dr. Mahalik, can you give us just a quick update, please?
Good evening. We had our initial meeting of the year about a week ago, and at that time we set our dates, which you approved tonight, and also we introduced our new membership, which you also approved tonight. And we began the discussion on the two topics that you have given us to study, and that is the comparable study on participation fees in athletics and activities, and also a study on wearing student IDs with either a lanyard or clip. So we are beginning to collect information. We'll bring that back in October to start going through the different information we collect from different schools.
No, it was a good first meeting, and we have two things we're going to be looking into.
Good. Thank you both. All right. Next is item G5, Policy 420, Action Plan.
With the original policy 420, it stipulated that with the passage of the budget, the administration must have an action plan in terms of regaining our fund balances. So what we will do, this fund balance action plan will become the administrative procedure that attaches to the policy 420. Also, something that was asked is that we're able then to trace this from year to year, and by putting it in the minutes, having it in here, we'll be able to trace that. Brad, if you have anything additional to add, you kind of put this together, or if any board members have any comments or questions or concerns. But we brought this the last meeting. I thought it was important to bring it one more time. It is now documented as then our action plan to work our way out of our borrowing.
The only comment I would just have real quick, sorry, would just be is, I really appreciate the fact that we're documenting this and putting in the minutes. I'd really like to be able to, on an annual basis, we're going to be, coming back with the results and show an update how we're doing, and I think it would be important to be able to look back in history and say, okay, where were we projecting, where are we at, how are we doing, and just, keep moving ahead on this road.
I would just change the recommendation line to increase operating funds balance by a minimum of 3%.
Perfect. Minimum 3%. We got it. Yeah. No, that's a good recommendation. And since it's administrative procedure, it's not an approval of skill. Okay.
All right. Next, item 6, Building and Grounds Report.
Included in your backup material, it was the O&M report for the last month. If anyone has any questions, I'm sure Rich can answer them, but in the interest of time, if no one has any questions, we can move to the next item.
Are there any particular questions regarding the building? None? Next, item 7, Community Relations Report.
Also in your backup materials was a community relations report for the past month. Once again, if no comments or concerns, it's providing in public comment, just an update of what's been going on. Some of it was covered by our class presidents this evening, State Council presidents.
Any questions regarding the community report? Next would be item 8, Asset of the Month.
Asset of the month, young person accepts and takes responsibility, model responsibility in your own life, and you make a commitment, follow through.
That school expects students to act responsibly, notice and affirm what they do, set clear and reasonable consequences for when they don't, and in the community challenge the assumptions that youth are naturally irresponsible. It's the asset for the month of October.
Superintendent, I'm sorry, legislative report.
What we included in the legislative report is a webinar that kind of explains the evidence funding for Student Success Act. So if anyone has any questions, Brad or Kelly or myself would be happy to answer those. We just wanted to provide that background as we will receive more and more information from ISB over the next couple of weeks regarding the funding.
And for that, now Superintendent's district report.
Attached to the Pride sheet, also one of the stipulations of our contract with Aunt Nancy's was that we receive their annual DCFS reports. So I've included that report in there for the board and public's reviews. Both East and Central had received 0 violations. There were a couple of paperwork violations at West that were corrected immediately. So positive on that front. Wanted to share that with the board as that's one of the stipulations in the contract.
And item 11 is other district business. Any members have anything they'd like to share at this point? Item 12, correspondence.
Invitations to the board, correct?
So then we will be seek a motion to go into closed session. Board will go into closed session to discuss collective bargaining, consider sale or purchase of securities, investment or investment contracts, and litigation. Is there a motion to go into closed session? There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second.
Okay, the vote is open.
Just again, there is no planned action, no action will be taken after closed session. So appreciate everyone's attendance. Thank you very much.
The vote is closed. Motion is passed.
Thank you.